Philosophy of Hinduism by Babasaheb Ambedkar. Question 3, Part 15. Here the narrative is again interrupted by the introduction of another story, that of King Ambarisha, king of Ayodhya, who was according to the Ramayana the 28th in descent from Ikshvaku and the 22nd from Trisanku. Vishwamrita is nevertheless represented as flourishing contemporaneously with both of these princes. The story relates that Ambarisha was engaged in performing a sacrifice when Indra carried away the victim. The priest said that this ill-omened event had occurred owing to the king's bad administration and would call for a great expiation unless a human victim could be produced. After a long search, the royal rishi Ambarisha came upon the Brahmin rishi Richika, the descendant of Bhrigu, and asked him to sell one of his sons for a victim at the price of 100,000 cows. Richika answered that he would not sell his eldest son, and his wife added that she would not sell the youngest. Eldest sons she observed being generally the favorites of their fathers, and youngest sons of their mothers. The second son, Sunasepa, then said that in the case he regarded himself as the one who was to be sold, and desired the king to remove him. The 100,000 cows with 10 millions of gold pieces and heaps of jewels were paid down, and Sunasepa was carried away. As they were passing through Puskara, Sunasepa beheld his maternal uncle Vishwamrita, who was engaged in austerities there with other rishis, threw himself into his arms and implored his assistance, urging his orphan, friendless, and helpless state as claims on the sage's benevolence. Vishwamrita soothed him and pressed his own sons to offer themselves as victims in the room of Sunasepa. This proposition met with no favour from Madhushanda and the other sons of the royal hermit, who answered with haughtiness and derision. How is it that thou sacrificest thine own sons and seekest to recuse those of others? We look upon this as wrong, and like the eating of one's own flesh. The sage was exceedingly wroth at this disregard of his injunction, and doomed his sons to be born in the most degraded classes like Vashishta's son, and to eat dog's flesh for 1,000 years. He then said to Sanasippa, when thou art bound with hallowed cords, decked with red garland, and anointed with urgens, and fastened to the sacrificial post of Vishnu, then address thyself to Agni, and sing these two divine verses, Gathas, at the sacrifice of Ambarisha. Then shalt thou attain the fulfillment of thy desire. Being furnished with the two Gathas, Sunasepa proposed at once to King Ambarisha that they should set out for their destination. Then, bound at the stake to be immolated, dressed in another red garment, he celebrated the two gods, Indra and his younger brother Vishnu, with the excellent verses. The thousand-eyed Indra was pleased with the sacred hymn and bestowed long life on Sunasepa. King Ambarish also received great benefits from this sacrifice. Vishwamrita meanwhile proceeded with his austerities, which he prolonged for 1,000 years. At the end of this time, the gods with the rank came to allot his reward, and Brahma announced that he had attained the rank of a rishi, thus apparently advancing an additional step. Dissatisfied as it would seem with this, a sage commenced his task of penance anew. After a length of time, he beheld the nymph Apsara Menka, who had come to bathe in the lake of Pushkara. She flashed on his view, unequaled in her radiant beauty, like lightning in a cloud. He was smitten by her charms, invited her to be his companion in his hermitage, and for 10 years remained a slave to her witchery, to the great prejudice of his austerities. At length he became ashamed of his ignoble subjection, and full of indignation at what he believed to be a device of the gods to disturb his devotion, and dismissing the nymph with gentle assents, he departed for the northern mountains, where he practiced severe austerities for 1,000 years on the banks of the Kausiki river. The gods became alarmed at the progress he was making, and decided that he should be dignified with the appellation of Great Rishi, Maharishi. And Brahma, giving effect to the general opinion of the deities, announced that he had conferred that rank upon him. Joining his hands and bowing his head, Vishwamrita replied that he should consider himself to have indeed completely subdued his senses, if the incomparable title of Brahman Rishi were conferred upon him. Brahma informed him in answer that he had not yet acquired the power of perfectly controlling his senses, but should make further efforts with that view. The sage then began to put himself through a yet more rigorous course of austerities, standing with his arms erect, without support, feeling on air In summer, exposed to 5 fires, that is, one of each of the 4 sides and the sun overhead. In the rainy season, remained unsheltered from the wet, and in winter, lying on a watery couch night and day. This he continued for 1,000 years. At last, Indra and the other deities became greatly distressed at the idea of the merit he was storing up and the power with which he was thereby acquiring, and the chief of the Celestials desired the nymph Rambha to go and bewitch him by her blandishments. She expressed great reluctance to expose herself to the wrath of the formidable Muni, but obeyed the repeated injunction of Indra, who promised that he and Kandarpa, the god of love, should stand by her, and assumed her most attractive aspect with the view of overcoming the sage's impassibility. He, however, suspected this design and became greatly incensed. He doomed the nymph by a curse to be turned into stone and to continue in that state for 1,000 years. The curse took effect and Kandarpa and Indra sunk away. In this way, though he resisted the allurements of sensual love, he lost the whole fruit of his austerities by yielding to anger, and had to begin his work over again. He resolved to check his irresistibility, to remain silent, not even to breathe for 100 years, to dry up his body, and to fast and stop his breath till he had obtained the coveted character of a Brahmin. He then left the Himalaya and travelled to the east, where he underwent a dreadful exercise unequalled in the whole history of austerities, maintaining silence according to a vow for 1,000 years. At the end of this time, he had attained to perfection, and although thwarted by many obstacles, he remained unmoved by anger. On the expiration of this course of austerity, he prepared some food to eat, which Indra, coming in the form of a Brahmin, begged that he would give him. Vishwamrita did so, and then, though he had done left for himself, and was obliged to remain fasting, he said nothing to the Brahmin on account of his vow of silence. As he continued to suspend his breath, smoke issued from his head to the great concentration and distress of the 3 worlds. The gods, rishis, etc. then addressed Brahma. The great Muni Vishwamrita has been allured and provoked in various ways, but still advances in his sanctity. If his wish is not conceded, he will destroy the 3 worlds by the force of his austerity. All the regions of the universe are confounded, no light anywhere shines. All the oceans are tossed, all the mountains crumble, the earth quakes, and the wind blows confusedly. We cannot, O Brahma, guarantee that mankind shall not become atheistic. Before the great and glorious sage of fiery form resolves to destroy everything, let him be propitiated. The gods, headed by Brahma, then addressed Vishwamrita. Hail, Brahman Rishi, we are gratified by the austerity. O Kausika, thou hast, through their intensity, attained to Brahmahood. O Brahman, associated with the mud roots, confers on thee long life. May every blessing attend thee, depart from where the every thou wilt. The sage, delighted, made his obeisance to the gods and said, If I have obtained Brahmahood and long life, then let the mystic monosyllable Omkar and the sacrificial formula Vashtakar and the Vedas recognize me in that capacity. And let Vasishtha, the son of Brahma, and the son of Brahmin, the most eminent of those who are skilled in the Kshatriya Veda and the Brahma Veda, knowledge of the Kshatriya and the Brahminical disciplines, address me similarly. Accordingly, Vasishtha being propitiated by the gods, became reconciled to Vishwamrita and recognized his claim to all the prerogatives of a Brahmin rishi. Vishwamrita, too, having attained the Brahminical rank, paid all honor to Vasishtha. The end.